Very thoughtful about what you do and what you say.
I'm trying to bring Janet's deputy, Janet, our purchase week. She's
Mm-hmm.
going to be retiring the next week. So I get somebody up to speed. So
Either
maybe-
you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. While my computer loads, it is not loading.
have to restart.
Today is Wednesday, June 12th. Time is 6:30 p.m., and I am calling this meeting of the Macomb Township Board of Trustees to order. We will say the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Posey, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Cusimano.
Here.
Trustee Lucido.
Here.
Trustee Oliver.
Here.
Trustee Nevers.
Present.
Treasurer Drollet.
Here.
Clerk Posey here. Supervisor Viviano.
Here.
All members are present.
I have to there you go.
I know. 1 second, everybody. Temperamental computer.
Where'd my agenda go?
So this is moving on to approval of the agenda. Is there any additions, deletions, or corrections?
Madam Clerk? any
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Trustee Kuzma supports the motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Kuzmano, to approve the agenda. Members, please vote. Roger, you're going to have to vote yes for me for a moment.
Uh-oh. I just got knocked off.
No.
Nothing.
All right. Good, because I couldn't get back in anyway. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to approval of the bills. Is there a motion to approve the bill run?
So move.
Support.
Any discussion? Hearing none, motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Nevers, to approve the bills. Members are all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes from May 22nd, 2024 and May 30th, 2024 budget hearing?
So moved.
Trustee Kuzma supports the motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, motion by Trustee Lucido, supported by Trustee Kuzmano, to approve the previous meeting's minutes from May 22nd and May 30th. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Public comment.
Public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped right over it. We now are at public comment. This is for agenda items only. If you have a public comment on it, the first item is item 9. This is a request to approve the law enforcement and emergency dispatch services agreement renewal with the Macomb County Sheriff's Office. Is there a motion to approve these contracts?
So moved.
Support.
Commander Abro from the Sheriff's Office and our new lieutenant are here, and they're going to share some information with us.
Again, Commander Aberhead, Sheriff's Office, and this is Lieutenant Eric Erler. Lieutenant Erler, before I get started, and introduce you, I think some of you have met Eric and some have not. Eric has worked various assignments from Mount Clemens to the Traffic Bureau, Detective Sergeant, and our Detective Bureau Administrative Sergeant, and our Detective Bureau. Eric served in our Internal Affairs Division. Eric is an EVO instructor who instructs all of our deputies pursuit tactics and the way they should drive a patrol car. He also serves on our crash board when officers are involved in vehicle crashes. So this is your new lieutenant, and I wholeheartedly believe he's going to do a phenomenal job out here for you and for the township. Before I get started, I know I've said this before, but I want to highlight our great partnership that we've had here with this township as far as I can remember since the first days I've started with the Sheriff's Office. We've had a great relationship, and I want to reassure the community that our commitment now and for the future. I'll go to the contract here for 2025. I've handed you all a sheet of what we have and what it looks like.
Commander,
2025,
Commander, I'm sorry. I should have prefaced before your comments. For the public's sake, before us is a contract renewal, but not only that, during our first budget hearing, This board was generally in favor of adding to the contract that's going to be presented here by the commander in a second. So I had a conversation with the commander last week, and he is going to discuss with us, present, what his recommendation is to adding to our ranks. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure I got that out there.
Yes, sir. So the current proposal, as you can see, for 2025, 26, and 27, the next 3-year contract, as you can see, you have 1 lieutenant, 1 sergeant, you have 30 deputies, 1.5 school liaisons, and that's because the school shares the responsibility on the percentage as far as that position. You have 5 dispatchers. It comes out to a total of 38.5 positions. And as we spoke, and we are looking at the future here of the township and where you're at as far as your population, and as a law enforcement professional and looking at the numbers and statistics, we're recommending that we add supervision to the midnight shift. And as you can see, I put down a couple documents there of what a supervisor does. Right now, we have 5 deputies that are on the shift that are not supervised. We're getting to the point where we're getting large enough, and we look at other communities to where they don't operate unless there's supervision on every shift, whether it's police departments, whether it's fire departments. Usually there is a supervisor. Being this size in the population, then when a resident or someone from the community asks to see a supervisor, they should be able to see a supervisor. Or our deputies, when they're looking at critical incidents, suicide, suspicious deaths, barricaded gunmen, vehicle pursuits, use of force-related issues and reporting, reviewing officers' body cameras and dash cams, patrol initiatives, improvements, internal investigations, etc. So currently right now there's a county-funded sergeant that patrols the midnight shift. That sergeant could be in Harrison Township, could be in Washington, could be in Richmond, Ray, Lenox. It is throughout the entire county. It takes time. We're seeing a rise in calls where citizens or the public is constantly requesting to see a supervisor. So instead of that citizen waiting for a supervisor to come from a different jurisdiction, we really should add a supervisor to the midnight shift. And I have statistics on other agencies and departments that we've looked at. But again, how proactive do you want to be as a board? I've said it all along in the last contract discussions is it's really up to you on what you want your police department to look like, on what type of representation you want to see for the public. And again, as a professional and as we're looking at statistics and what we're doing here, that's my recommendation, is to add a supervisor to the midnight shift.
Thank you, Commander. At this point, I'm going to open it up to the board to ask the commander questions.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Commander. When you state that supervision would be helpful in the township, I think what many of us on the board are trying to decide is between adding another deputy in the field patrolling the township versus adding a supervisor. Would this supervisor help with patrols within the township?
Yeah, so as you know, Eric, the lieutenant on day shift, does a lot of the administrative work that's going to take any complaints. There's 30 deputies out here. There's all types of requests, whether someone needs time off, whether it's FMLA, whether it's vacations, So the sergeant on midnight shift, what we would like is a working sergeant. That's what our sergeants do. Once they're done with their paperwork, once they're done with the direction that they give the deputies of that shift, we want that supervisor on the road. We want that supervisor to stop in on traffic stops, go to calls with the deputies to determine, what's right, what's wrong. There's a lot of questions that go on different situations, and deputies do ask for supervision, and now they're waiting for that supervisor to come from another jurisdiction.
So I know it's hard to guess, but what % of the time do you think the midnight supervisor would be actually on the road within the township actively in that role?
Well, we anticipate that as soon as they're done with their work, I mean, I'm looking at maybe 70% of the time they should be on the road patrol. It's midnight shift. That's where things are, especially in the summertime. That's where things are kicking off, and they're running call to call to call. And I look at other, no offense to the fire department or other police departments that we look at, is that everyone has supervision when they go out to runs or calls, or there should be a supervisor on that shift. When you're small enough, I would say no, but we're at the point now, you're at 92,000 residents, 94. It's really time to add supervision to that shift.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Have we ever had supervision on a midnight shift?
No.
Okay. And midnight starts at midnight and goes,
I think they start coming in around 10:30,
Okay.
and their shift starts about 11,
all right, 11 till
7.
7 in the morning. In between them times, let's say 2:30 in the morning, 2:30 to 5, is there a lot of activity?
Yes, we just did statistics for between your town and Clinton Township. We beat Clinton Township's police runs in the month of January, February, March.
January through May, February was the only month where they had more calls for service.
Right. They have 109,000 residents, so we're beating it. And what you have to look at is deputies have questions on an arrest. Deputies have questions on traffic stops. Deputies get requested by the public to see their supervisor. And the size of this town should have that request readily available. We're not, I remember when we first started patrolling in 2000, Eric's 1990, the town was very, it wasn't that big, but we're getting to the point now where, yes, we should add deputies and we should get supervision. We made some calls to other police agencies. I have those facts of the supervision. Again, it's up to you. What do you want and what kind of response do you want and how proactive you want your police department to look.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. So, with no disrespect to any of the deputies on duty, but when you start to build a department of 5+ people, it's generally necessary to have somebody supervising your own employees. With downtime or when there's time where other things can be done, generally it helps to have a supervisor there, in my opinion, to make sure that the work keeps on moving and that those that are there are being supervised and encouraged to do other things as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I'm not saying the deputies are doing a bad job.
I'm not
I mean,
either.
they're running call to call, especially on midnight. And a lot of the calls on midnights, just so you know, they're a 2-person run. So when you're going to a domestic situation or an alarm on midnights, it's 2 officers going to that call. If it's a domestic and there's an arrest, those 2 are off the road. You have 3 left. So, the supervisor can give direction. I know we've had some issues on midnights to direct the deputies on proactive patrol, critical incidents, questions that they have. And like I stated, we're just to the point now where the town it's getting there. To where, yes, supervision is definitely needed, just for those reasons.
Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead, Peter.
Just a question and also a comment, I guess. So by looking at the 2, just so the residents are aware, it looks like the difference between having a deputy versus a sergeant is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $47,000 per year in cost. Is that
Yeah.
about?
I thought it was 37.
So the sergeant position comes out to, and this is with obviously the
Right,
ancillary
it's
cost
47.
and benefits and wages. It's $219,000. A replaced deputy is $172,000.
Yeah, so about 47,000 more. So about, the way I look at it, about 50 cents per resident to have supervision and another person on patrol is a reasonable ask, in my opinion. I just want to make that comment, so.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, through the
Yes.
chair, I have a few questions. So
we've talked quite a bit about the population. Have the actual numbers of incidences increased? If so, do you have actual numbers rather than speaking in generalities?
Do you have some numbers I think you have? Yeah, do you know what that was? I don't know if I have the accurate calls for service. We were just comparing our calls to the other jurisdictions and comparing manpower. We were able to compare manpower between us, Clinton Township, us here, Shelby Township, us here, and Sterling. That
We answer approximately 2,100 calls per month.
20, and do you know what the other jurisdictions were?
The one in Clinton Township was right around the same.
So about 2,100 calls per month is what Eric's saying here, and Clinton Township was about the same.
Those are on the night shift? Or is that the
That's just
total?
overall. You know,
Overall?
it's just tough to determine, right? One day we could have action on day shift, and one night midnights is just out of control where we're asking Washington Township, and we did pull statistics that we do ask because we're the sheriff's office. We're able to pull deputies from other jurisdictions to give us a hand.
Well, do you have the numbers for because it is $219,144 for the shift sergeant. Do you have any actual numbers for Macomb Township of critical incident questions being asked by deputies on the night shift?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers, but I can always get numbers for you on the midnight shift and forward that to you. But I'll just give you some of the other agencies. For example, Clinton Township operates with 3 command officers per shift, a lieutenant and 2 sergeants on every shift. Their minimum is 2. Sterling Heights, 2 command officers per shift. Shelby Township, 2 command officers per shift. So we're asking the supervision not because of the calls. We're asking that we give these deputies direction, or when questions are asked, that we're not pulling a county-funded deputy or county-funded sergeant that could be anywhere.
Well, what happens as things stand right now? Is it the board being led to believe that that shift supervisor at the county is not responding to questions or requests to see a supervisor?
No, absolutely, they will. No, they'll come out, whether if they're in Harrison dealing for example, if they're on a death. Once they're done with that death, they'll come here to direct whatever deputies or whatever question a citizen or public may have. We're looking at the population and how big you're growing. We drive around town, you are expanding. Definitely, you should have supervision. Police departments, fire departments, they usually have supervision on their shifts.
And that's shift supervisor that's at the county that responds, albeit perhaps a little bit later. That's not an additional cost to the taxpayers of Macomb Township, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, do you know how often there's a request to see a supervisor by a citizen on the night shift in Macomb Township? And I'll just cut to the chase. My concern is that there's been no showing that there's been any need other than the population in our comparison to other municipalities which have, I think Clinton Township has its own police force, correct?
Correct.
And I want to tell you guys, you do a great job for Macomb Township. I'm a big supporter of you. You're professional and never had any issues personally and never heard anything bad. My concern is that the same argument can be used to add a shift supervisor during the 2-day shifts as well, if we're just going to judge it on population increase. So can you address my concern that we're not just heading down a road of increasing our supervisory? Well, how can you explain how does a supervisor make a Macomb Township resident more safe?
Well, I don't believe it's more safe. It's for the workforce. It's for the questions that are getting asked. It's for the what I just stated to you. If there's a critical incident in this town on the midnight shift, we are pulling a supervisor from wherever they may be to come out here and assist. If there's a vehicle pursuit, you have no one monitoring the deputies here in this township that if they're getting on Hall Road, they're doing 100, 110. You know, is it getting dangerous? Is it not? We're relying on the county-funded supervisor to make the decision. To have your own embedded supervisor that knows the deputies that work out here to make the decisions, critical decisions, suicides, a barricaded gunman, a use of force incident that needs to be reviewed immediately. These things are getting shipped down to Mount Clemens. These things are getting shipped to the county-funded supervisor. And again, it's your decision. You, as a board, you determine what kind of service you want for the public.
Fair enough. Do you have any solid numbers on the number of suicides where a shift sergeant needed to be called, or a barricaded gunman in Macomb Township?
We have suicides on there. Was that for 2023?
This is for just in general.
Sorry, we're just looking here. And just so you know, all deaths, a supervisor comes to all deaths, not just suicides, due to it's determined, is it natural? Does it look suspicious? Does the detective bureau need to be contacted? So it's not just suicides.
Okay.
Just suicides?
Suicides. That's persons.
Is that accurate there? 7. 10. Total. That's suicide and deaths.
Suicides and deaths.
Don't quote me on this. We're close to 55 in the last 5 months between suicides and deaths. I said, don't quote me on this. We're going rapidly through these sheets. So
That's fine.
close to 55 between January and
End of May.
end of May. That's between suicides and deaths. That's a supervisor response to those. So it's 55 times a supervisor response. Now, I can't tell you if that's on days, afternoons, midnights. I'd really have to start breaking down statistics. But you do have supervision on days, and you do have supervision on midnights. I'm sorry, afternoons.
There's supervision during afternoons other than the county-provided one, supervisor?
Yes, you do have a sergeant, as you can see at the very top of your attachment A. There's one lieutenant who's standing here to my
Okay.
right, and you have one sergeant on the afternoon shift.
So this sheet that was passed out and provided in the board packet shows one sergeant, net of one sergeant at $219,144 per year. Is that all inclusive of all, including the lieutenant for our current population of sheriff deputies that are supervisors?
So the line above that, Frank, is the lieutenant's rate,
I see one lieutenant,
234, 923.
that would cover one shift.
That's one lieutenant. That's standing here. And then we have one sergeant who's on the afternoon shift. That's Sergeant Cass, who just started with us. And then the rest of our contingent is deputies, which is the third line, the 172, 28, 268.
So are we proposing to add a sergeant?
Correct,
Okay. So we don't currently have a night shift sergeant.
correct.
So is the lieutenant available for the day for 16 hours?
No, the current, so the, go ahead, Commander.
Yeah, the lieutenant's available on day shift for 8 hours, your sergeant here for 8 hours, and then there's no one on the midnight shift.
Okay. The 24 hours in a day, right?
Yes,
Yeah, you're missing the supervision on the midnight shift.
All right, supervision on the midnight shift. That's 16 hours, right, for two individuals? 8 hours each.
well, the lieutenant, Frank, is one of the supervisors. So he's the supervisor for the day
Yes.
shift. The first sergeant is the supervisor for the afternoon shift,
Okay,
and then we're missing one on the third.
so the additional sergeant is not indicated in the breakdown for 38.5?
This is current numbers. I'm sorry, that's where the confusion.
That's my confusion.
The current number, the current contingent is in the numbers in front of you.
All right,
so-
thank you, Mr. Chairman, that answers my questions.
Okay. So just to, does anybody else have any questions? I just wanted to.
Quick
add a
follow-up question.
little Clarity. Go ahead.
Thank you. Commander, I'm a little bit, I think the goal, at least my goal, in providing law enforcement is to make the township as safe as we can. And one of the answers you gave to Trustee Kuzmano was, well, it's not a question of making the township safer. So maybe we're better off hiring a deputy. Would that make us safer instead of a sergeant?
Well, like I stated earlier, the sergeant's is also going on patrol, so you're still adding a position, but you're I guess in today's day and age, there's a lot of new officers, there's a lot of questions. You don't have any supervision on midnight shift.
Right,
So
is it, I just want to know,
Yeah.
are we making our community safer by adding additional personnel, or are we not?
well, I think Eric goes out there and makes traffic stops.
Yeah, I
He
mean, they're doing
goes to
great, but if
domestic
they're doing-
calls.
if-
So, yeah, I think a supervisor does go out to the calls as well.
So the additional personnel will make a difference to public safety?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I was a little confused
Yeah.
by one of the questions. Well, it's not a question of making things safer. I'm like, well, then what are we doing it for?
Yeah, I sorry if I confused you there, but yeah, it's still a police officer with a badge that's going on the road.
Okay.
If something happens in front of them, they're going to handle it. If they have to make an arrest, they will.
Thank you. So, and before you just quickly summarize, as a treasurer, we've looked at the fund balance for law enforcement, and the law enforcement fund balance has been very healthy. So we had a decision as a board to make. We don't want to just build up fund balances for the sake of stockpiling fund balances. Our job is to use that money for the benefit of the public. So we either have to lower the tax that we charge residents for law enforcement, or hire additional law enforcement services to provide, enhanced law enforcement services. So I think one of the things we discussed at our board hearing was doing both, adding additional law enforcement, particularly to cover the night shift. That was why we're having you here today, hopefully. And at the same time, we can tweak back the millage a little bit so we don't end up so we can still have a healthy fund balance for the law enforcement fund. That's it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. If nobody has any more questions, just, I guess it's a sort of a question. So one of my assertions has been with my colleagues is that I believe having a sergeant on the night shift that's permanently assigned to Macomb Township, any of the deputies that are permanently assigned to the township will develop a familiarity with our community, learn where the trouble spots are, learn, sort of the feel and the ebb and flow of how our issues might be compared to a neighboring community where they might otherwise be assigned. Is that in and of itself an advantage to having somebody assigned rather than relying on a county-wide supervisor?
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, you want to talk about the direction that you give the sergeants?
So when you're looking at, as a lieutenant, instructing the sergeants, they allow everything to be more efficient. When they go to calls, when they answer the questions, whether it's on the phone or in person, the decisions are made more quickly. It allows the deputies to free up some of their time because they are being more efficient, and this will allow them to be available towards the citizens, which would ultimately make the community safer.
Yeah, and you look at, if there's a certain subdivision or there's a certain business, like I know like 7-Elevens come up on midnight shift where, congregating, this is where the sergeant starts directing the manpower saying, I want 2 people at this intersection. I want someone to go through this subdivision. These are the incidents that are coming up. The deputies right now, they're going call to call to call. And that's why I said, how proactive do you want to be? And this is where the supervisor comes into play. The supervisor communicates with the detective bureau. Where are hot spots? What's happening? Where are we having traffic crashes at? What business are we having a problem with on midnight shift? What subdivision are we having issues, whether it's breaking into vehicles, whether it's auto theft? This is where the direction comes in, and that's where the supervisor comes in. And yes, it's a huge asset to have.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
So we have, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, we have 5 current deputies in the, on the midnight shift?
On each shift, yeah.
Each shift.
But
So-
you have, I'm sorry, well, you have, so you have a 5, these are minimums. You have 5 on midnights.
Okay.
You have 6 on afternoons, and you have 5 on day shift. It can be up to a max of 8 on day shift, max of 7 on afternoons, and a max of 6 on midnights. It can be a max. Sometimes there's a training day where everybody has to work. I have the minimums and maximums of the other agencies, and I can show them to you at a later time, but it's significant.
So we'd be going from 5 to 6, which is a 20% increase for our night shift.
Yeah,
Effectively.
and on midnights, Eric is really busy on day shift, and I know he's got tons of things that are coming at him. But on the midnight shift, once the officer gives out briefing, once the sergeant, that sergeant's not sitting in the building. There's nothing to do. The sergeant needs to get on the road.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Mr. Chair, if we vote to approve the contract before of it, does it include, the contract before us include the addition of the sergeant?
It does not. So the motion maker would have to amend his motion to approve the contract and also include 1 additional sergeant.
So, Mr. Chair, I believe I made the motion. I'd like to amend the motion to approve.
No, Charlie.
Charlie made you seconded it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Charlie made the motion.
I'll amend it to that, to include a sergeant.
Okay. You second?
Included a sergeant, yes, I second that.
Okay. Are there any questions or discussion from the board at this point? Hearing none, there's a motion by trustee Oliver and supported by treasurer Gillette to approve the law enforcement and emergency dispatch services agreement renewal with the Macomb County Sheriff's Office and to include an additional sergeant. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And I'll get you a new attachment on the exact dollar amount once it's put together.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to the next item, number 10. This is a request to approve the Building Authority Commission reappointment of Stacy Smith, our Township CFO. Is there a motion to approve?
Trustee Kuzma makes the motion to approve.
Support?
Any questions or discussion?
Is she qualified?
More so than most of us. Hearing none, motion by trustee Kuzma, supported by trustee Oliver to reappoint Stacy Smith to the Building Authority Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Did we ask her if she wanted to?
No, we dare
Have a
not.
choice?
Okay, at this time, we're going to open the public hearing for our 2024-2025 fiscal year budget. Before I open the public hearing, I'm going to ask Township CFO Stacy Smith to provide us some comments.
First off, I just want to take the opportunity to thank this board for their countless hours spent on working on this budget. Our first public hearing on May 30th was nearly 9 hours long with numerous charts, department head presentations, and excuse me, deliberations on how to, with the board on how to best service the residents of this community not only in a very fiscally responsible way for the upcoming year, but for future years. So thank you. With that, I'm just going to go over a couple highlights, and then we can open it up for discussion. Tax revenues, which are derived from the millage rates that are set, account for nearly 42% of the governmental funds revenues. The general operating and Parks and Rec millage rates in the upcoming agenda item will be reduced by about 0.41% due to the Headley rollback in this upcoming year. There are no proposed increases in the fire operating or fire pension millage rates. And as discussed a little earlier, the police millage rate has a proposed decrease of about 3.3%. The budget projection, or the projected governmental fund budget reflects approximately 2.9 million planned spend down, of which includes nearly 17 million in capital improvements. The overall revenues across all funds did increase about 10% over the current fiscal year budget, primarily due to the board gaining the $5 million for the Broughton Road development grant, the $5 million grant for the Broughton Road development, and increases in the investment income. Overall expenses in the general, excuse me, in the governmental funds has decreased about 3.2%, while the overall expenses in all funds, not just the governmental, has an increase of about 10%. Again, this has to do with the planned capital improvement plans for water and sewer and the governmental funds. Governmental funds, as I mentioned, is about 17 million in capital improvements, and the water and sewer has about 14.2 million in the upcoming budget year in capital improvements. With that, I will open up for any discussion, questions that you may have.
Thank you, Stacy. Does report, just do the public hearing. All right, at this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing. Time is 7:08 p.m. So if there's anyone who wishes to make comment on this year's budget, just like public comment, make your way to the microphone on the right-hand side of the room. I know this is a public hearing. I don't see anyone in the public. Does any of the board want to make any comments before we close the public hearing?
Well, would we do that during the actual agenda item to
can.
approve the budget?
You can do that too. Awfully quiet. Okay.
Too quiet.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Time is still 7:08 p.m. And that'll take us to item 12, which is a request to adopt the 2023-2024 budget amendment resolution. Is there a motion to approve the budget?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Support.
Stacy, do you have any additional comments?
Yes, so this is actually for our current fiscal year to amend the
I'm
budget
sorry.
and do reallocations for the 2023-2024 budget. The general fund revenues need to be increased by $3,558,055, which is primarily due to the increase in investment income and sale of some property that we hadn't budgeted for in the current fiscal year. The Parks and Rec fund revenues need to be increased by $166,600 due to higher than expected investment income, and the expenditures need to be increased by $1,052,446. That is primarily attributed to, we had budgeted a little more last fiscal year for Pitchford Park, and it ended up flowing over to July and August of this year, so we spent a little more this year. So we spent less last year, more this year, so we just need to adjust that, those expenses in the Park and Rec. So with that, I am proposing to adopt the amendment and the budget amendment and reallocations for the 2023-2024 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. My mistake. Our next year's budget is item 14, so we'll get to that in a minute. Any questions on this budget amendment resolution for the current year budget that we're in?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to give kudos to the Treasurer's Office. Stacy, you've been around for a while. This $3 million in extra revenue from investment income, what was the reason why that revenue from investment income didn't exist in previous budgets that you've worked on?
The 3 million increase isn't just the investment income. There's a little over, I think, $1 million in the general fund over budget, or more than we had budgeted for. And that has to do, there's higher interest rates out there, obviously, this year that we had not anticipated when we were budgeting last year. But also our deputy treasurer spends time daily moving money back and forth to get us the best interest rates we can. So he will look at the cash flows and, like I said, daily move money. So,
And he
he's a-
took advantage of that to bring value to the township residents, because revenue that is found doesn't have to be generated through higher taxes.
correct.
Fair statement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, if I may, I'd just like to piggyback on Trustee Kuzmano's, question. I can't say enough about the value that our deputy treasurer, Carl DeAndrea, adds to the community, because he doesn't. He goes well above and beyond what one would expect with regard to being very attentive to finding rates, very attentive to finding rates on a like Stacy said, on a pretty much daily basis, and we'll move money here and there, and sometimes put a little pressure on some of the financial institutions to give us a little better rate, lower our fees, in a way that must be super annoying to those financial institutions. But the net result of it, in this year, because of the market environment, the financial environment, and because of his attention to this, has been several $1 million in additional funds that the township has that we don't have to get from resident taxes. So I think that's a large part of what makes this budget particularly unique that we'll be voting on coming up.
Thank you, Treasurer Gillette. Any other questions? Hearing none. Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Nevers, to adopt the 2023-2024 Budget Amendment Resolution. Clerk Posey would call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, Treasurer Gillette,
Yes.
Trustee Nevers,
Yes.
Trustee Kuzimano,
Yes.
Trustee Lucido,
Yes.
Trustee Oliver,
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes, Supervisor Viviano.
Yes, that resolution is adopted. All right, moving to item 13. This is our 2024 millage rates. All the different millage rates are a part of this item. We are going to address them one at a time and do a separate roll call vote on each one.
Mr. Chair,
Stacy, do you have any comments on the millage rates before we start tackling these?
No, just the Headley rollback and the .05 reduction in the police protection that was mentioned earlier.
Okay. Did you want to say something before we
Mr.
get
Chair, I was
started?
going to make a motion to set the upcoming fiscal year millage rate for general operations at .6232 mils.
Is there a second?
Support.
Is there any questions or discussion? Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Lucido, to set the general operating millage at .6232 mils. Clerk Posey would call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, Treasurer Gillette,
Yes.
Trustee Lucido.
Yes.
Trustee Kuzimano,
Yes.
Trustee Oliver.
Yes.
Trustee Nevers.
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes, Supervisor Viviano.
Yes, that millage rate is set.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we set the fire operating assessment at 1.9 mils with the understanding that continuing the fire operation millage is on the ballot for August 6th. If that passes as a millage, that would replace the 1.9 assessment that we're approving now.
Okay. It's a little mouthful there. Do I have to repeat all that?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Support.
Is there any questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Is that the maximum that's allowed under previous board resolution?
No, I think the current max under the SAD that we are operating under currently is 2.
So we're actually coming in below
Correct.
what we're authorized under the law from what the voters gave us authority to levy.
Correct. And I think we did that 2 years ago. We dropped it to
2 years ago, we
1.9.
dropped it, this board dropped it from 2 to 1.9, even though we're allowed to collect up to 2.
We're making do with less, like
Correct.
a lot of our citizens. All right, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Lucido, to set the fire operating millage at 1.9 mils. Plus all the other stuff that Leon said about the upcoming
millage on the ballot.
Clerk Posey will call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, Treasurer Drollet,
Yes.
Trustee Lucido,
Yes.
Trustee Kuzimano,
Yes.
Trustee Oliver,
Yes.
Trustee Nevers,
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes, Supervisor Viviano.
Yes, that fire operating millage rate is set.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the fire pension millage at .0625 with the provision that if voters approve the fire operating millage on August 6th, we will reduce that fire pension millage to .00.
Is there a second?
So moved.
I'd like to make a comment if I may, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
you want to explain that?
Yes, so, if voters approve on August 6th, the millage at 1.9, it'll be moving from a special assessment at 1.9 to a millage at 1.9, which is a broader taxing basis. So at that point, and being that our current pension system is over 100% funded, at that point, we can basically reduce the operating pension, or the pension millage, from .0625 to 0, use the millage of 1.9 that voters would approve to help support the pensions if necessary, and have a 100% funded fire pension system.
So just a quick question to council, if I can, Tim? So we can, I just want to make sure, if we set the millage rate at its current .0625 and put in the provision that if the millage rate passes in August, it automatically gets reduced to 0, that's acceptable?
That's acceptable.
Okay. Just double checking. Any questions or discussion on that? Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Oliver, to set the fire pension millage at .0625 mils. And if the current ballot proposal for a fire operating millage passes on August 6th, it will automatically be reduced to 0.0.
Mr. Chairman, one last question, and through the chair to legal counsel. Would that be enforceable, what was just stated on the record here by a taxpayer? To your
Meaning if we
knowledge?
fail to reduce
If we fail to reduce it,
If in fact the millage passes, if we fail to reduce it,
I would think it would, yes.
yes. Another legal source that I respect has indicated that as well, so there's no trickery or artifice here. This is a drive to lower the taxes of the residents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Trustee Kuzmano. There's no more questions. Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee, did I already say it in the record? I did already, didn't I?
I think
Clerk Posey, you call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Treasurer Drollet,
Yes.
Trustee Oliver,
Yes.
Trustee Kuzimano,
Yes.
Trustee Lucido,
Yes.
Trustee Nevers,
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes, Supervisor Viviano.
Yes, the fire pension millage rate is set.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion that we approve the police law enforcement millage rate for the upcoming fiscal year at 1.45 mils.
Support.
Any questions or discussion?
Just to recap that we're reducing it from current rate of 1.5 mils, but even with that reduction, we do have the funds available to hire the additional sergeant and boost the night patrol.
And the fund balance will remain healthy. in
And
the
the fund
upcoming
balance will
years.
remain very healthy.
Okay. Any other questions? Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Lucido, to set the police protection millage at 1.45 mils. Clerk Posey, will call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Treasurer Drollet,
Yes.
Trustee Lucido,
Yes.
Trustee Kuzimano,
Yes.
Trustee Oliver,
Yes.
Trustee Nevers,
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes, Supervisor Viviano.
Yes. The police protection millage is set.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
I'd make a motion that we approve the Parks and Recreation millage for the upcoming fiscal year at .7469 mils.
Support.
Any questions or discussion?
Just note that this is a reduced rate based because of a head rollback.
Noted. No more questions? Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Clerk Posey, to set the Parks and Rec millage at .7469 mils. Clerk Posey, we call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Treasurer Drollet.
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Kuzimano.
Yes.
Trustee Lucido.
Yes.
Trustee Oliver.
Yes.
Trustee Nevers.
Yes.
Supervisor Viviano.
Yes, Parks and Rec millage is set. This will take us to item 14. This is where I was jumping the gun to. This is the General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2024-2025. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Trustee Kuzma supports the motion.
Stacy? Anything else?
I just wanted to, again, thank the board for all their work. This appropriations just rolls up our 53 pages of numbers into two. So with that, I just am requesting a motion to adopt the General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 24-25.
Okay. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I may just make a comment. There may be some folks that look at what the board has been doing with budgets the last 4 years and wonder if it's a violation of the laws of physics. We've reduced taxes every year for the last 4 years and yet increased what we're investing in our roads, our sidewalks, in our parks and recreation, in public safety. And it's not a violation of the laws of physics. It's about prioritization. It's also about additional revenues we've got in from aggressively pursuing state and federal grants, also from a very aggressive financial investment, secure, but very active financial investment that we are able to bring in additional revenues in a way that allows us to cut rates to residents, spend a record amount. This budget spends $6.4 million on roads, which has never been spent on roads before in Macomb Township. We'll be spending $1.4 million on sidewalks in this budget, more than ever. We are hiring an additional firefighter in this budget. We are hiring an additional sergeant for the Sheriff Department in this budget. And we're also spending almost $2 million on park improvements in this budget. A new playscape at Waldenburg Park, where the playscape is getting a little long in the tooth, renovating the bathrooms at Corners Park, a new younger playscape at Corners Park, reservable pavilions at Pitchford Park, parking lot improvements, and beginning the work on putting some amenities at Lucido Park. Up and down our park system, this budget invests money to improve those parks and provide more amenities to residents. It provides more public safety for residents by hiring additional personnel. It spends more on our roads and our sidewalks. And yet we're able to do this by reducing taxes on residents. It's the fourth year we've been able to do it. It's not magic. It takes a lot of work. And I can't commend Stacy, the finance department, enough for the amazing amount of work that she puts in to prepare the document that we have before us today, and to thank my colleagues for the long hours that we put in at the first budget hearing to go through this and see what we can do to maximize the value and return that we get to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Gillette. Anyone else? Okay, here no more comments. Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Guzmano, to adopt the General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2024-2025. Clerk Posey, you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Treasurer Drollet.
Yes.
Trustee Kuzimano.
Yes.
Trustee Lucido.
Yes.
Trustee Oliver.
Yes.
Trustee Nevers.
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Supervisor Viviano.
Yes. General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2024-2025 is adopted. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Let's take us to item 15. This is a request to approve water and sewer rate updates beginning July 1st of 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Support.
Mr. Johnson?
All right, good evening, Board. The rates presented to you this evening were also shown to you last year. As you may recall, I requested a 2-year rate update, but you guys amended it to 1 year to see if and also make sure that we would be following, being fiscally responsible with our budget and capital planning and that such to make sure we stay on track. As you may know, both water and sewer and engineering start in October with capital planning, spend a lot of hours with our two engineering firms, Fishbeck and AW, to go over our plan to make sure the projects that we need to do have to be done, and we're not just doing projects to do projects. These need to be done to make sure that the system is efficient and effective for the residents. So that gets approved. The 5-year capital plan gets approved in February. Then we go on to the budget, which obviously you approved this evening, and that brings us to tonight. And also we work with UFS. We have worked with UFS in the past with Dawn Lund. She's an expert in her field and making sure with the fund balance, what we have, what we're spending, to make sure we're on target. And that was the study that we did 2 years ago to monitor, to make sure we're staying within the budget and the costs that we said we would per your direction. And with that, we have been staying on target. And again, talking with Stacy, go from $4.25 per unit to $4.49 per unit, which is a 24-cent increase or 4.9%. And keep in mind, 1 unit of water is roughly 750 gallons of water, just to give you some perspective. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Kevin. Now, just to restate a couple things that you just said, but I just want to highlight them. The 2-year water rate study was performed by UFS, correct?
Yes.
Last year, instead of adopting the 2-year that was recommended, we decided to adopt the first year only, and then to see how the year went, as you just said.
Yes.
Has anything, whether it's revenues, expenses, capital planning, has anything changed in the last 12 months that you believe we should consider changing the recommendation from UFS?
No, not this time.
Okay. That was my questions. Any other questions? This is always a sensitive topic on water rates.
Mr. Chair,
Nothing any of us like to do.
if I may.
You may.
Thank you. So we just passed a budget. This board has reduced tax rates every year for the last 4 years. The first several years this board sat here, we did not raise water or sewer rates at all. We are always looking for a way to reduce the burdens on our residents. And, I believe that where we can find a way, we do. And where we can find a way, if we have to raise rates to provide a necessary service, we do it as minimally as possible. So I believe that it's unfortunate that inflation and other factors that affect the cost of operating the water system are causing us to have to raise rates a little bit. We don't want to do it. But we understand that we have an obligation and responsibility to provide that service at an acceptable level to our residents, and we believe this is the cost that's necessary to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else?
This one,
Go ahead.
Kevin, just roughly annually, what will it cost the average house? Did you calculate any of that?
I don't have an average, not necessarily. If you're just using 1 unit of water, it's roughly $35-ish. So, depending on a family using 7 or 8 units, it could be $50 a quarter. But again, that's 5 units. But some families could use 40, some use 20. So it's I didn't really give an average.
So it'd be under $100 a year, easily.
$100 a year. Potentially, depending on how much water gets used, it could be.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
We do have discussions before the meeting, and I appreciate you and your knowledge on the subject. Could you tell the residents what happens if the system is not maintained to the levels that Ms. Lund has indicated are necessary and reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely. So over time, if you decide not to maintain the system, what happens is over time, more water breaks will occur, more sewage issues could occur, sewer backups could occur, which means I would need more staff to be able to handle those situations. There's some communities out there that have, much like the sheriffs, they have 3 shifts. They have a day, an evening, and a night shift because they have over 200 water breaks a year. Is it to say they didn't maintain their system? Not necessarily. It's just when it ages, there's a lot to do. So you just have to keep up and maintain as necessary. So we do our best to make sure we keep everything as up to date you know, water flowing in both directions for the residents.
Kevin, I'm sorry, Frank.
Go on,
finish.
Mr. Chairman.
No,
No, I'm not
I was
done yet.
completely cutting you off, so go ahead, finish.
So that the residents are aware that there's a component of debt that's gonna be incurred through a bond as anticipated. And the purpose of that is to keep rates as low as possible for people on fixed incomes, among other reasons.
Yeah, so the bond that potentially we'll be assessing that next year or this coming fiscal year to see what's necessary, but it's to make sure that we're keeping the capital projects that need to be done to keep them moving along as needed, because obviously costs aren't going down. And water and sewer projects are not cheap. You know, at 23 Mile Road, that sanitary project alone was $12.5 million. And we only went from Card to Romeo Plank a couple miles. So, I mean, it's still a far way, but we have over 400 miles of sewer in this township, and that was only 2 miles that we worked on. So it gets expensive quick.
Now, you heard the sheriff's deputy and commander talk about a comparison to Clinton Township, for example. Comparing us to other municipalities, is our system in good shape in your opinion? And what's the reason for its condition?
Yeah, I would say compared to other communities, we're in very good shape, and it's because that we take a very proactive approach, not only to maintaining, we spend $1 million every year on lining sewer projects, which is amazing and necessary to prevent potential sewer issues in the future. We're working on capital projects, not only for maintaining the existing water system, but also the growth as roads come in and things happen. You want the infrastructure in first if you can to avoid having to put it in after the fact. Usually underground goes in before roads go in. So there's a delicate balancing act that we do work with engineering department to make sure all that gets done in an effective and efficient manner so we're not costing us more money in the future.
And does that translate into reliable water supply and sewer service for our residents?
Absolutely.
So there's few and farther between interruptions in service because we're doing that. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. The whole goal is to minimize the impact to the residents as much as possible.
Okay, and to your knowledge, is there any other alternative to modest increases in rates over the course of the next, in perpetuity, actually?
Well, we did, as you guys approved a few meetings ago, we are looking into a water master plan update where we're looking to see what's an effective and efficient method to make sure not only have adequate pressure for the township, but to make sure we're providing adequate water cost to the residents. We're looking at pressure districts, storage tanks, booster stations. We're looking at different facets to see what's the most cost-effective measure to make sure we're providing the lowest cost service to the residents.
And that's for the entire system.
Entire system, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a comment. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and without any other funding mechanism, such as a special tax district, when these subdivisions go in, which, from my personal knowledge, the developers put the infrastructure in place, then it gets titled to the municipality, which would be Macomb Township in this case, and then the depreciation clock starts ticking. And it's our responsibility to the residents to make sure that their water and sewage is attended to properly, that the infrastructure is cared for and is appropriately maintained. And there is no magic wand, there is no magic funding source. It either has to come through rates or debt or from general operating millage. And So it's an unfortunate circumstance, but there is no magic bullet that's going to solve the problem. And keeping the rates as low as possible has been a major agenda item for me ever since the election in 2020. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzmano. And I no longer have questions because I should have known better. Frank was very thorough as always. Thank you, Frank.
Oh, you're welcome, sir.
Any other questions or discussions? Okay, hearing none. Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Clerk Posey, to approve the water and sewer rate updates beginning July 1st, 2024. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a request to approve the LED lighting project to RCI Electrical Contracting in the amount of $134,213.42.
So move.
Support.
Mr. Johnson.
All right, so this project is going to be 100% funded by a grant. We've been working with Deputy Supervisor Jody Claycomb on this to make sure that it follows grant protocols so that we'll get reimbursed 100% for this. So the total grant that we were going for was $138,090. Going through this process, as you noticed through the confirmation of process memo, we had multiple bids. We did 4 interviews. RCI Electric was the lowest responsible bidder. They were very thorough, knowledgeable, and well prepared for this project. They say it'll probably take anywhere from 6 to 7 weeks to complete. We're going to be completely putting LED in basically the remainder of the township, which is Town Hall, the Recreation Center, DPW, fire stations 3 and 4, and the senior center. So there are LEDs in some of these portions of these buildings, but we're renovating everything, getting everything LED. So there'll be a lot of electrical savings. We felt that they were the most competent for this project, and so with that, their initial project was to do all that. That came to roughly $124,000 with the additional scope. What that means, we tried to buy, if we could, buy additional lights for these so we could actually have some extras on hand. So if the lights go out, we can buy extras to replace them. The grant will cover all this cost, which brought it to $134,000. So the additional $11,000 is extra hardware and electrical components we'll have on hand, so as lights go out, we can replace them. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Kevin.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Johnson. Do you have any estimate of what the savings might be in electricity to the township as a result of this change?
I do not have that number, but I apologize this evening, but I can get it to you.
I appreciate that. I anticipate there will be some savings. LEDs are substantially more efficient than other forms of lighting that are still available today. But I would like to then commend Deputy Supervisor Claycomb and yourself for securing this grant, which will allow us basically to do this at no cost to Macomb Township taxpayers. But they will see a savings, and we'll see a savings hopefully when this change is made over, and will hopefully be a substantial savings or some significant savings in electrical costs. Thank you.
It was all Jody, not me, so give her kudos.
Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, for purposes of fair disclosure, I understand that the Michigan Public Service Commission has a different rate, approximately 5 times the rate for LED bulbs.
Do they?
Yes.
That's
So the utility companies have found a way to avoid savings for the lack of volume of their product.
so for clarity, Trustee Kuzmano, Kevin, this grant is for our buildings, right?
Buildings, yes.
Yeah,
not
these are for internal. So I think the rate
Yes.
you're referring to is for lamps, for the street lamps. Right,
I
correct?
think it goes across the board for all electrical service, including
it?
the municipalities. Street lamps are billed to the township.
Right, at a different rate than regular
Yeah.
lamps.
Thank you for that.
It's an interesting little twist.
Yeah, be curious.
Rigged.
Curious if you could find out any information on that, Mr. Johnson. Thank
You
you.
get new technology and they find a way to subvert the free market. Thank you, Mr.
Government.
Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzmano. Any other questions? Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Lucido, to approve the LED lighting project to RCI Electrical Contracting, Inc. in the amount of $134,213.42. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item for DBW is a request to award the 21 Mile Road and Romeo Plank Sanitary Sewer Project to In Situ Form in the amount of $1,226,284.56.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Kevin?
All right, so this project is a major project for the township. It's working on some of our biggest pipe in the township, 36-inch and 48-inch pipe, which is obviously you could basically walk through. So it's degraded enough to where over half the pipe wall is completely gone. So it is of urgent importance we get this done, and also that it affects a lot of the township. So we need somebody who knows what they're doing, can be efficient and effective, and bypass pumping. Cannot have any issues with this because it will affect a lot of residents if something goes wrong. So we use the Omnia Partners contract, and through that we interviewed two companies. There was SAK and In Situ Form. They both provided us quotes, as well as did an interview with them to go through their entire idea of what the project was going to be, what their process was, how their bypass pumping was going to work. SAK, their cost came in about roughly $100,000 less than In Situ Form. But one of the drawbacks to SAK's quote was they wanted to use our township pump station as a part of the bypass pumping. And the concern with that is we're using our assets. There's engineering terms that I'm not going to bore you with. I'll let Jim do that if you'd like. But there's elevations that you have to pump sewage up, and we're afraid that by using our pumps, you're going to stress our pumps out, which could cause damage to them, and now we have to repair them. And these pumps are not cheap. They're $80,000. To repair one could cost $30,000 to $40,000. So the even though In Situ Forms is $100,000 more, the cost to repair pumps could be more than that $100,000. Also with In Situ Form, when they go down there and assess the pipe, there's an additional thickness in the quote for roughly $150,000 that if they don't need that thickness, that can be a savings to the township. So we could save roughly $150,000 if they don't need the additional thickness based on what they see when they assess the pipe and install this liner. So there could be some savings, which would bring that to be less than what SAK's price came down to be. But In Situ Form had a very thorough plan. They were very they know what their plan of attack is. Their goal is to start it as soon as this is awarded. We'll set up a meeting. They want to be substantially complete by August 30th, with final restoration of the sites and everything to be September 1. So they're going to get moving right away and get this thing lined. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. Jim, you can bore us later. Motion by Clerk Posey, supported by Treasurer Gillette, to award the 21 Mile Road and Romeo Plank Sanitary Sewer Project to In Situ Form in the amount of $1,226,284.56. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is a request to hire the buyer, Mr. John Marsh. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tabaka.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and board members. I'm looking to extend an offer of employment to John Marsh for the buyer position within our clerk's department. We received 13 applications. Myself, Christy Posey, Stacy Smith, and Janet Solomon interviewed several of these candidates, and we all determined John would be a great fit for this position. John is currently working in a similar position with the city of Pontiac currently. This is a budgeted position. If approved, we're looking for a start date around July 8th, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tabaka. Any question or discussion? Hearing none. Motion by Trustee Oliver, supported by Clerk Posey, to approve the hiring of John Marsh as our new buyer. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Marsh.
John did join us today.
Congratulations.
Moving on to item 19 is a request to adopt the ordinance amendment to the zoning code, traditional neighborhood development ordinance.
Trustee Kuzma makes the motion.
Support.
Mr. Box.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. We are before you this evening asking to adopt the ordinance for the TND, or Traditional Neighborhood Development Ordinance. As you are all aware, we have a zoning ordinance over the whole township, but the town center area here in Section 9 has a completely different set of standards. This was developed in the late 1990s and it really implemented in the early 2000s, and not much development took off. There have been some minor tweaks over the years, but we have taken over a year at this point to go through and really revamp this ordinance in a way that can make it more friendly for our town center to develop, but also keep the same look and feel that we see out there today. Staff has been through this countless times. This has been the Planning Commission, I think, 3 or 4 times for comments and review, and we finally feel like we're in a position to move forward with this. We met with several landowners, developers, residents to go through this as well and get feedback. But at this time, I think we're ready to finally move forward and hopefully get this approved so we can continue the development in the town center.
Thank you, Mr. Box. Any questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. Motion by Trustee Kuzma, supported by Trustee Lucido, to adopt the ordinance amendment to the zoning code, Traditional Neighborhood Development Ordinance. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a request to approve the amendment to the Plan Unit Development Agreement at McBride Crossing. This is located in the southwest corner of 24 and Future Broughton. Permanent parcel ID 0816200012. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Box.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. As you mentioned, this is for a PUD development. Those come with what's known as a PUD agreement that kind of outlines some of the rules and how this will develop. This amendment this evening pertains only to that agreement. Nothing about the site plan, or excuse me, the concept plan that was approved as a part of the PUD agreement is changing at this time. It really has to do with some deadlines that were part of that agreement. The developer had some deadlines that required them to donate portions of the property for the right-of-way of Future Broughton. However, they had some delays in closing on the property, so they were unable to meet those. They can't donate property that they don't own for right-of-way. So I believe they've closed in May, and these new deadlines they will be able to meet. Staff is in full support of this, and Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Box. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none. Motion by Clerk Posey, supported by Trustee Oliver, to approve the amendment to the Plan Unit Development Agreement for the McBride Crossing, permanent parcel ID 0816200012. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. So let's take us to our second public comment of the evening. This is for any item at all. If you wish to make comment, please make your way to the microphone on the right-hand side of the room.
I'm Marlene Thompson at 21133 25 Mile Road. I just have a comment. You know, it's so great that, you know, our roads and everything are being improved, our sidewalks are being put into the township, but the road between Broughton and Foss Road is an absolute disgrace. I've had 3 flat tires, 1 tire completely ruined, asphalt going into my windshield. I had the windshield replaced, another piece of asphalt going into the side of my car. You know, going over this road, you know, it's a disgrace, you know, in the township. It's less than a mile road, and I'm just not understanding why that section of the road cannot be replaced. I'm sure Mr. Oliver would agree. He has to travel it to come here. He knows the bumps and the holes and everything else in it. And the amount of traffic we have coming off Foss Road is phenomenal. And I just, you know, I've called the state, I've called the road commission, I've talked to people here, and it just seems like they each one shove the responsibility or the amount of it costing onto somebody else. So I just like to make a comment about this and hope something can be done to improve this road other than keeping the road commission, you know, constantly repeating filling potholes all the time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? I don't see anyone else. Take us to board comments. Trustee Lucido.
First, congratulations, Mr. Marsh. Welcome aboard. Thank you. Just want to make sure the residents know the amount of work that Stacy does. I just want to say thank you to her. We were here for 9 hours going through that budget meeting, and if anybody had a question, it was within 30 seconds she had an answer, and I love that. So thank you, Stacy, and thank you to this board. With the millage rate set tonight, I just wanted to point out something that the treasurer had said earlier. We voted to increase police protection tonight, at the same time reducing that millage. I think that's something that is just, we can all hang our hats on, and I think we're doing a terrific job with giving the taxpayers the best value for their dollar. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lucido. Trustee Nevers.
As usual, I'm in 100% agreement with my colleague here. And I would like to congratulate our new buyer. And also, I would like to wish everybody out there, the board members and in the audience who are fathers, on your special day on Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Nevers. Trustee Oliver.
Thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, same thing. Mr. Marsh, thank you. Thank you for applying. Stacy, again, thank you. Just like Pete says, I think there was a lot of questions answered within 5 seconds. So you're really great on that, you and your staff, and again, all the staff that works for our township. It takes a whole community of people to run this community. And again, we do it up here. We're in and out, but you guys are carrying the weight, and appreciate that all. And that's about it.
Thank you, Trustee Oliver. Trustee Kuzmano.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, also would like to congratulate Mr. Marsh. And as I say with any new employee to the township, if there's anything that we can do better that they were doing in your previous employer, make sure you let your supervisor and our supervisor know. Also, I want to comment on the 9 hours for the budget meeting that took place. That's a labor of love to this community. I think that the trustees are paid less than the people who pick up refuse in the parks, given the rate of pay, but it's everyone attended, and for the full 9 hours. And there were disagreements. And one of the things I want to say about this board, which makes it very special to me, at least to serve on, is that we can continue to have respect and dignity for each other's ideas and opinions, even though we disagree, and there's a lot of disagreement. I want to make clear that one of the roles I see as a trustee is to ask the difficult questions. I have nothing against the police force that patrols our streets. The Macomb County Sheriff's deputies are excellent, and I have nothing bad to say about their service to the township. But it's when we're spending $200,000, politics is the allocation of resources and burdens, and we have to make decisions. $200,000 for a sergeant, I was satisfied personally, and I voted yes on that increase. So I just want to conclude by stating that it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve with everyone on this board, and look forward to the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzmano. Treasurer Gillette.
Of course, I want to extend our appreciation to Mr. Marsh for joining us, and also agree follow up with appreciation of our fathers that will all hopefully be celebrating a great day on Sunday. And, just want to state that, Trustee Lucido had mentioned that we are reducing the tax rate for police protection, while in addition adding 20% more patrol at night for the township. That's something that we've been building on for the last couple of years. As was pointed out a little earlier by Trustee Kuzmano, we're authorized to allocate 2 mills for the fire department. We allocate 1.9 mills. We reduced that rate, and yet in the last 4 years, we've hired 4 additional firefighters. So, and we've also put before voters a reduced Parks and Rec millage that was then lowered a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and since that time have put millions of more dollars with this new budget into upgrading our parks and expanding our park system. And that happens because this board and our employees here in the township have a very similar vision. That's providing value to the residents. The focus is providing value. The hard decisions are, how do we provide that? How do we continue to improve the services we provide while keeping rates down or lowering rates? And we do disagree, Trustee Kuzmato, as Trustee Kuzmato noted, on how we do that, but we come together and find a way to do it. And I want to express my appreciation to the Finance Department, to the employees of this township, and to my colleagues on the board for continuing to find ways to achieve that mission. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Treasurer Gillette. Clerk Posey.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Welcome, Mr. Marsh, to our team. We're excited to have you as soon as possible. His knowledge and experience will be a tremendous asset to the department and puts us already ahead of the game before he's even started. So we're excited to have you, and congratulations. I'm just going to touch on elections. We have the August 6th primary election approaching. Your applications to vote by mail are already mailed to you. We ask that you return those as soon as possible. If you have checked the box to be on the permanent ballot list, the ballots for the August 6th election will be to the post office on June 27th. If you don't receive it within a week or so, you can give our office a call and we can help locate that or correct that issue for you. I'd also like to provide some clarification regarding drop boxes throughout the township. It was brought to my attention there was some concern on social media with regards to how many drop boxes and the location of the drop boxes throughout the township. I would like to assure our residents that when we administer elections, we're following state and federal laws. We don't just willy-nilly decide where things need to be and how many. Due to the population in Macomb Township, we are required to have 5 drop boxes throughout the township, which that was due to proposal 22-2 passing, and we needed to add 2 additional drop boxes for this election cycle. In my opinion, the safest place for those additional drop boxes to be is on township properties, which included 2 of our parks because they are monitored daily by our staff, in addition to surveillance that has been added to each park to monitor those drop boxes. So I'd like to make some clarification on that. I hope it answers some people's questions. And always, our phones are ringing from 8 to 4:30. If you have any questions with regards to how we're operating an election or a ballot or application or any concerns whatsoever, please call us instead of making assumptions. We would really appreciate it so that misinformation doesn't get spread and everybody can understand why things are done. And it's generally because it's the law. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Clerk Posey. Welcome, Mr. Marsh. That budget we just passed has a tremendous amount of work for you, so get ready. Stacy, I don't want to say too many nice things 'cause I'm afraid you'll get poached, but we literally could not be in the position that we are in without all of her hard work and that of her team. Commander Abro had to leave, but I want to thank him for coming out here tonight and providing us an explanation for the contract and answering our questions. Our relationship with the Sheriff's Office, Pamela Pitchford, seemed very happy with how the park came out. A lot of activities there. A lot of people were playing pickleball. People were on the playgrounds. Folks were in the dog park. And it was a great morning and a great example of how much that park has impacted the community already. So I'm very proud of the work that all of the staff put in to making that park a reality, and I want to thank the board for all of their support in executing the plan. Tons of Trucks is this Saturday over at the near Dakota High School on that corner of Heindreich and 21 Mile Road. It is the township's largest event. I encourage everyone to go out. It's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., completely free. And you will get to see every big truck, vehicle, construction piece of equipment. Fire department will be on hand. It's a lot of fun for the kids, monster trucks, and all kinds of fun things. So I encourage everyone to go out and take advantage of that event. And lastly, Macomb Township offices will be closed on June 19th. That's next Wednesday for Juneteenth. Normal business hours will resume the next day on Thursday the 20th. And with that, I am now going to ask for a motion to go into closed session regarding a written confidential legal opinion and labor negotiation strategy pursuant to MCL 15.268 CH.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Support.
Any questions or discussion? Clerk Posey, will you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. Treasurer Drollet?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Kuzimano?
Yes.
Trustee Lucido?
Yes.
Trustee Oliver?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Supervisor Viviano?
Yes. We are going to enter closed session, and the time is exactly 8 p.m. We are returning from closed session. The time is 8:18 PM.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move to approve the collective bargaining agreement between Macomb Township and the Michigan Association of Firefighters effective July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2029, subject to legal review of the final contract language, and authorize the supervisor to execute the same.
Trustee Kuzma supports the motion.
At this time, I'm going to ask Labor Council to give us a quick review of the agreement that we have tentatively entered into with the labor union.
Good evening to the board. Just as a brief summary of the negotiation process, last week the union ratified the contract. The major highlights would be increases to the union at 3% for the first year, retroactive to the contract expiration, 3% for the current year, and then 2.25% each year thereafter. It is a 6-year contract that will expire on June 30th, 2029. In addition, the major change in the contract was a move from paid on call to part-time. $84, reduced to $23.84, reduced to $23.35. Response calls that.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.
You win by 1 minute.